On October 7, 2023, at 3:30 p.m., during what was supposed to be my 75th birthday celebration, a restaurant in Paramus, New Jersey. Yes, that Olive Garden, the one next to the Dick's Sporting Goods, because my son Christopher said, fancy restaurants are wasted on someone who shops at Walmart, clips coupons from the Sunday paper, and thinks Applebee's is a special occasion. My only child stood up in front of 43 family members, friends, Goldman Sachs colleagues he'd strategically invited, to network with his wife's wealthy family, and several people I'd never met who were apparently there for the free unlimited breadsticks, raised his glass of the house red wine that cost $7.99 per glass and tasted like regret mixed with food coloring, cleared his throat with the self-importance of someone about to deliver a TED Talk, and began the toast that would destroy his entire worldview, evaporate his inheritance, and become the most expensive speech in Olive Garden history. Ladies and gentlemen, family and friends, colleagues and others, he began, that pause before others hanging in the air like an insult wearing a tuxedo. I want to thank you all for coming to celebrate my father's 75th birthday. 75 years. 3/4 of a century. That's a long time to be alive, and an even longer time to be unremarkable. A few people shifted uncomfortably. My sister Dorothy, 72 years old and sharp as the knife she looked ready to throw at Christopher, muttered something in Jamaican patois that definitely wasn't happy birthday. Madison, Christopher's wife, smiled that particular smile of someone watching their investment mature, not knowing she was actually watching it crater in real time. My father, Henry James Lancaster, Christopher continued, his voice taking on that particular tone of false warmth that politicians use when they're about to gut Social Security, represents a generation of men who did their best with limited opportunities and even more limited ambitions. Born in 1948 in Newark, New Jersey, in what I believe was called a tenement, though Dad insists on calling it an apartment, he had all the disadvantages you'd expect. Poor family, bad neighborhood, the kind of circumstances that some people overcome and others don't. He paused here for effect, taking a sip of his wine, his $30,000 Rolex Submariner, the one he bought to celebrate making managing director, the one that cost more than I'd officially made in a year, catching the light from the fake Tuscan chandelier overhead. Dad was actually smart once. IQ of 147, if you believe the tests from back then. Could have gone to college, probably even a good one. But instead of using that intelligence to build something meaningful, he went to Vietnam, not as an officer, mind you, but as a grunt, came back, and decided that the pinnacle of his ambition was to become a janitor. Not just any janitor, but a high school janitor. The same high school, Newark Central, for 50 years. 50 years. Pushing the same mop, cleaning the same toilets, never missing a day, never complaining, but also never achieving anything beyond the most basic survival. Christopher's Goldman Sachs colleagues were recording this on their phones now, probably for later entertainment at happy hour. One of them, a young analyst named Brad who looked like he'd been born in a Brooks Brothers, was actually taking notes like this was a case study in failure. While his classmates from the 1960s went on to become doctors, lawyers, engineers, entrepreneurs, people who mattered, people who built things, people who left legacies, Dad chose the safety of a mop bucket and a bi-weekly paycheck. While others were investing in their futures, building portfolios, creating wealth, Dad was investing in, well, nothing really. He lived paycheck to paycheck in the same small house for 40 years, drove the same car until it literally died and had to be towed away, wore the same clothes until they developed holes that even patches couldn't fix. Madison laughed here, a tinkling sound like champagne flutes breaking. Her parents, Robert and Eleanor Walsh. He owned 17 car dealerships across New Jersey. She owned opinions about everyone poorer than them, nodded approvingly. They'd never understood how their daughter had married into such humble stock, but Christopher had assured them he was nothing like his father. But here's what Dad taught me, Christopher continued, now hitting his stride, his voice carrying across the restaurant, causing other diners to turn and watch this public execution, perhaps unintentionally, perhaps through negative example. He taught me what not to become. By watching him accept mediocrity with a smile, I learned to demand excellence with a roar. By seeing him mop floors for 5 decades, I learned to climb corporate ladders in 5 years. By knowing he lived in the same 1,200 square foot house since 1971, I learned to upgrade, to grow, to expand until I owned a 4,500 square foot house in Short Hills with a pool, a tennis court, and a 3-car garage. The Olive Garden waitress, Brittany, 22 years old, working her way through Rutgers, who'd been serving me lunch every Tuesday for 3 years and knew more about my actual life than my son did, looked like she wanted to dump the soup of the day minestrone directly on Christopher's head. She'd heard me talk about my investments, knew I tipped 50% not from guilt but from abundance, understood that the man in the $39.99 Kohl's clearance rack jacket was not what he seemed. By watching him count pennies at the grocery store, yes, literally counting pennies to make sure he had enough for milk, I learned to count millions at Goldman Sachs. By seeing him clip coupons from the Sunday paper like it was 1952, I learned to clip deals worth more than he'd make in 10 lifetimes. By knowing he still shops at Walmart and thinks the dollar menu at McDonald's is a bargain, I learned to shop at Bergdorf Goodman and know that quality costs what it costs. My nephew Marcus, Dorothy's son, a lawyer who knew exactly how much I was worth because he'd helped structure some of my trusts, was turning red with suppressed rage. He'd wanted to tell Christopher the truth for years, but I'd sworn him to secrecy. Let him hang himself with his own rope, I'd said. The higher he climbs, the farther he'll fall. Dad is now 75 years old, Christopher continued, approaching what he thought was his grand finale, living off Social Security checks that barely cover his property taxes, supplemented by my charity. Yes, I give him money regularly because that's what successful sons do for their failed fathers, and probably wondering where it all went wrong. Where that 147 IQ disappeared to. Where the ambition that should have been there never materialized. Where the American dream that everyone else seemed to achieve somehow passed him by. He raised his glass high, the restaurant lighting making his wine look like blood, which was appropriate since he was committing financial suicide. So here's to Henry Lancaster, the janitor who raised an investment banker. The failure who somehow created success. The poor man who inspired wealth through his poverty. The man who proved that not everyone can make it, not everyone has what it takes to matter, not everyone deserves prosperity. But at least, Dad, you taught me through your example of what not to be, how not to live, what not to accept. For that inadvertent lesson, I thank you. Happy 75th birthday. May your remaining years be as comfortable as my financial planning can make them, since your own planning clearly wasn't sufficient. The silence that followed was absolute, the kind that usually only exists in space or in marriages after someone admits to an affair. You could hear the breadsticks baking in the kitchen, the coffee machine gurgling in the corner, someone's pasta cooling on their plate. 43 people stared at Christopher like he'd just defecated on the table and called it chocolate mousse. My sister Dorothy spoke first. Christopher, you stupid, arrogant, ignorant boy. Excuse me, Christopher said, still glowing from what he thought was his triumph. Sit down, I said quietly, my voice carrying the authority of someone who'd survived Key San, raised a son alone after his mother died, and built a fortune so large that Christopher's entire net worth was a rounding error. Sit down and learn something for the first time in your privileged, presumptuous, pathetic life. I reached into my jacket pocket, yes, the same $39.99 Kohl's clearance rack jacket that Christopher had mocked when I arrived, saying, Dad, they make clothes that don't look like they're from the Reagan administration, and pulled out a single piece of paper I'd been carrying for 6 months, waiting for this exact moment, this perfect intersection of arrogance and ignorance. This beautiful collision of assumption and reality. I unfolded it slowly, deliberately, the way you'd unwrap a gift you've been saving for exactly the right moment. The paper crackled in the silence, sounding like fire starting, which was appropriate since I was about to burn Christopher's entire worldview to ash. Christopher, I said, standing now, my 75-year-old body straighter than his had ever been, you're right about one thing. I was a janitor for 50 years. I did push a mop, clean toilets, mop up vomit from teenagers who couldn't hold their liquor. I did live in the same small house, drive used cars, clip coupons. What you're wrong about is everything else. Everything that matters. Everything that would have made you rich if you'd inherited it, which now you never will. I held up the paper, angling it so everyone could see it clearly. It was my Vanguard investment account statement, the main one, dated October 1, 2023, showing a balance of $82,764,445.89. This is one of my investment accounts. One of 12, actually. Total value as of last Monday, $124,364,445.89. The silence exploded into chaos. Christopher's face went through every possible human emotion in about 4 seconds: confusion, disbelief, anger, hope, despair, and finally, system failure. He fainted backward, falling directly into the unlimited salad bowl, his $5,000 Armani suit soaking up Caesar dressing like his brain was trying to soak up the impossible truth. His head hit the Italian dressing with a splash that would have been comedic if it wasn't so perfect. Madison screamed, not a little gasp or a surprised "oh," but a full-throated horror movie, someone just died scream that made the entire restaurant think Olive Garden had added murder mystery dinner theater to their offerings. She grabbed the statement from my hand, staring at it like it was written in ancient Sumerian, her perfectly manicured nails, $200 every 2 weeks, trembling as she held it. "This is fake," she stammered, her voice cracking like her worldview. "This has to be fake. You're a janitor. You shop at Walmart. You drive a piece of shit Honda with duct tape holding the bumper on." "It's a very reliable piece of shit Honda," I said calmly. 247,000 miles and still running. Unlike your marriage, which is about to break down completely. Let me back up and tell you how a poor black kid from Newark's worst neighborhood ended up with more money than everyone in this Olive Garden combined would make in 10 lifetimes, while successfully convincing his Harvard-educated son that he was a failure. I was born on October 7, 1948, at 3:47 a.m., the exact time, 75 years later, that Christopher would deliver his devastating toast. The timing wasn't coincidence. It was karma with a watch. I was born in a tenement building at 47 Broad Street in Newark that had been condemned in 1945, but somehow housed 17 families in 1948 because housing codes were more like housing suggestions when it came to black families. My father, Samuel Lancaster, worked at the Ballantine Brewery from 1943 to 1971, 28 years of coming home smelling like hops and resignation, his hands permanently yellowed from handling barley, his dreams permanently yellowed from handling reality. He'd wanted to be an engineer, had the mind for it, could calculate load-bearing weights in his head, understood physics intuitively, designed improvements to the brewery's efficiency that his white supervisors took credit for. But being black in 1940s America meant his engineering dreams got engineered into brewery work at $1.25 an hour. My mother, Ruth Elizabeth Lancaster, née Johnson, took in laundry from white families who lived in Forest Hill and wouldn't let her in their front doors. She'd pick up their dirty clothes from the back porch, wash them in our apartment's single tub while we bathed in buckets, press them with an iron heated on our stove, and return them pristine to the same back porches, collecting her $3 per load that had to feed 5 kids. She made miracles with government cheese, turned Spam into 4 different meals, convinced us that water soup, literally hot water with salt and, if we were lucky, an onion, was a delicacy. I was the youngest of 5, what my mother called the surprise blessing, and my father called another mouth we can't afford to feed after his 3rd Valentine. My siblings, Samuel Jr., Ruth and Marcus and Dorothy, were all smart, but I was different. I could read before anyone taught me how, just looked at books and understood. I did math in my head that my teachers had to verify with paper. I remembered everything I read permanently, like my brain was a filing cabinet that never got full. When I was 12, the school gave me an IQ test. 147. The white guidance counselor, Mr. Peterson, who drove a Buick and lived in a house with a lawn and looked at us kids like we were a different species, called my parents in for a meeting. "Your son is gifted," he said, the word gifted sounding like an accusation. "He should go to college. MIT, perhaps. Or Princeton. They have programs now for exceptional students from challenging backgrounds. My father laughed so hard he had to hold his ribs. MIT? Princeton? You think we got that kind of money? You think they take kids like us? The boy needs a job, not dreams that'll just break his heart. Dreams are for people who can afford to fail. But Mr. Kowalski, the head janitor at Newark Central High School, thought different. He was a Polish immigrant who'd been a professor of mathematics at the University of Warsaw before the war, before the Nazis burned his world, and he rebuilt it one mop stroke at a time in Newark. He found me one day in 1962, when I was 14, doing calculus problems on paper towels during my dinner break. I'd gotten a job as an assistant janitor, working 3:30 p.m. to 11 p.m. after school, making 85 cents an hour. "This is wrong," he said, pointing at my equations. "No, it's not," I said, ready to fight. "Yes, it is wrong that a mind like yours is pushing a mop. The mathematics, however, is perfect. Where did you learn calculus?" "Library book." "Show me more." For the next 4 years, Mr. Kowalski taught me advanced mathematics after our shifts. Differential equations, linear algebra, probability theory, statistical analysis. But more importantly, he taught me about compound interest. "Henry," he said one night in 1965, his thick Polish accent making my name sound like Chenry. "In America, they see the mop and not the mind holding it. So you use the mind while they watch the mop. You know what compound interest is. Interest earning interest. It's more than that. It's time becoming money. It's patience becoming power. It's the one thing that works the same for a janitor as for a Rockefeller. Money doesn't care who owns it, only how long they own it. You understand." I understood. But understanding and executing are different things, and I had no money to compound. I graduated from Newark Central in June 1966, third in my class despite working 40 hours a week. I had full scholarship offers from 3 universities, Rutgers, Howard, and even Princeton after my English teacher, Mrs. Morrison, one of the few black teachers, secretly nominated me for a special program. The letters came to our apartment, heavy with possibility, smelling like futures I could almost touch. My mother cried when she read them, holding the Princeton letter like it was made of gold. "My baby's going to college. My baby's going to be somebody." My father got drunk and punched a hole in our wall. "Somebody? He's already somebody. He's somebody who needs to work, not sit in classrooms with white boys who'll never accept him anyway." I was going to prove him wrong. Had my bags packed, my bus ticket to Princeton bought with money I'd saved from janitorial work, my future planned down to the semester. Then came December 1st, 1966. The first Vietnam draft lottery. My birthday, October 7th, was number 17. By December 15th, I was at Fort Dix, New Jersey, for basic training. Instead of studying economics at Princeton, I was learning how to kill people efficiently. Instead of differential equations, I was calculating firing trajectories. Instead of compound interest, I was learning about compound fractures. By March 1967, I was in Da Nang, Vietnam. 18 years old, 6,000 miles from Newark, carrying an M16 I barely knew how to use, wearing boots that didn't fit, fighting a war nobody could explain for reasons nobody understood. The heat was like breathing soup. The jungle was like walking through God's greenhouse after he'd forgotten to water it for a decade. The enemy was invisible until they weren't, and then it was usually too late. I was assigned to the 3rd Battalion, 26th Marines. Our first major operation was Operation Prairie. We lost 17 men in 3 days. I watched Tommy Rodriguez from the Bronx, who taught me to play poker and owed me $3.50, step on a mine and turn into red mist and memories. I held Corporal Johnson from Alabama, who'd called me boy until I saved his life and then called me brother, while he died from a gut shot that turned his intestines into spaghetti. By January 1968, I was at Khe Sanh. If you don't know about Kisan, imagine hell with humidity. 77 days of siege, constant shelling, constant attacks, constant death. The North Vietnamese army threw everything at us: artillery, rockets, mortars, human waves. We threw everything back: B-52 strikes, napalm, Agent Orange, our sanity. I was shot twice during Kisan. First time, January 30th, sniper round through my left shoulder. The medic, a kid from Iowa named Peterson who'd been pre-med before getting drafted, patched me up with one hand while firing his .45 with the other. Second time, February 20th, shrapnel from a rocket that killed 3 men standing next to me. I got 17 pieces in my legs and ass, spent 3 weeks in a field hospital that was really just a tent with delusions of grandeur. March 15, 1968, I earned the Bronze Star. Our helicopter got hit by an RPG, crashed, caught fire. The pilot was dead, the co-pilot was unconscious, 3 men in the back were trapped. I don't remember making the decision to go back. I just remember pulling them out one by one, my hands burning through my gloves, my lungs filling with smoke that tasted like burning flesh because that's what it was. Saved 3 men. Got burns on 30% of my body. Still can't grow hair on my left arm. I came home April 23, 1969. Newark Airport. In uniform with my medals because I was proud, because I'd survived, because I'd served. The war protesters were waiting. They spit on me, called me baby killer, murderer, fascist pig. One woman, a college student with clean clothes and clean hands and a clean conscience, threw eggs at me while screaming about atrocities I'd never committed. The patriots were no better. They thanked me for my service while offering nothing else: no job, no opportunity, no understanding that thank you for your service doesn't pay rent or stop nightmares. The scholarship offers from 1966 were gone, given to boys who hadn't gone to war. The universities said I could reapply, start fresh, but with what money? The GI Bill would barely cover community college, and I needed to work, needed to eat, needed to stay busy enough that I couldn't think about Kisan. Mr. Kowalski was retiring from Newark Central and found me living in a boarding house, drinking too much, fighting my demons and losing. "Henry," he said, "I'm retiring. The janitor job is yours if you want it." That's it? That's my life? Janitor. It's $4,200 a year. Health insurance. Pension after 30 years. And Henry, it's honest. In America, for men like us, men who've seen too much, men who know too much, men who the system has already chewed up, sometimes honest is all we get. I took it. Not because I couldn't do better, but because I'd learned in Vietnam that survival wasn't about glory or dreams or what should be. It was about tomorrow. And tomorrow required money, even if it came from a mop. But here's where my story diverges from what Christopher thought he knew. I didn't just become a janitor. I became a student of money, obsessed with compound interest the way some men are obsessed with women or cars or sports. Every night after my shift, I'd go to the Newark Public Library and read investment books until they closed at 9 p.m. Then I'd go home and read more until I fell asleep, the books replacing the nightmares, the numbers replacing the body counts. I read Benjamin Graham's The Intelligent Investor 17 times, making notes in the margins until the librarian gave me my own copy because I was wearing theirs out. Warren Buffett's shareholder letters became my Bible. Peter Lynch, John Bogle, Charlie Munger, I studied them all like my life depended on it, because it did. On September 14, 1970, I made my first investment. $100 in Xerox at $84 per share. 1 share plus change. Everyone laughed. A janitor buying stock? Henry, stick to your mop. Leave investing to white folks with money. But I understood something fundamental. The market didn't care what color I was or what job I had. It only cared about time and mathematics. And I had both. I met Barbara Collins on September 3, 1971, at Newark Central High School. She was a new English teacher, Fresh from Montclair State, 23 years old with an Angela Davis afro, she wore like a crown and a smile that made me forget about Vietnam for the first time in 2 years. She was beautiful in that way that had nothing to do with magazines and everything to do with soul, skin the color of coffee with just enough cream, eyes that saw through bullshit like X-rays through flesh, a laugh that could make you believe in God again even after you'd seen what God allowed at Kisan. I was mopping the hallway outside her classroom when she came out, stayed late grading papers. "You're Henry," she said. "Not a question. I'm the janitor." "No, you're Henry. Mrs. Morrison told me about you. Said you were brilliant. Said you should have been at Princeton. Should-haves don't pay rent." "No, but they can pay dividends if you invest them right." That's when I knew she was different. She understood metaphors about money. Our first date was September 18, 1971, at a diner on Broad Street that served breakfast all day and had coffee strong enough to wake the dead, which I sometimes felt like. She ordered pancakes with extra butter, didn't care about calories or appearances. I ordered eggs over easy with wheat toast, the cheapest thing on the menu because I was saving every penny for investing. "Tell me about the war," she said. "Nobody wants to hear about the war." "I do. Tell me what made you who you are." So I told her. About Kisan. About the helicopter. About coming home to spit and spite. About choosing a mop over madness. She listened without interrupting, without judging, without the false sympathy that civilians wrapped around themselves like armor against veterans' truths. "You're not a janitor," she said when I finished. "You're a survivor disguised as a janitor. There's a difference." We got married June 15, 1972, in her parents' backyard in East Orange. Small ceremony, 40 guests, her father suspicious of the janitor marrying his college-educated daughter, her mother suspicious of any man who'd been to war. Total cost, $400, which Barbara insisted we split because this is a partnership, not a purchase. We moved into a small house in Bloomfield, 1,247 square feet, 3 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, a kitchen the size of a closet, and a basement that flooded every spring like clockwork. Bought it for $18,000 using my VA loan, $0 down, 7% interest, $134 monthly payment that felt like $1,000 but was actually a bargain. Barbara taught English during the day, I cleaned the school at night, and in between we planned. Not just our lives, but our revolution against poverty, our compound interest insurgency. "Henry," she said one night in October 1972, spreading the Newark Star Ledger on our kitchen table that wobbled unless you put a matchbook under one leg, "Look at this." She'd circled an article about some company called Walmart going public. Sam Walton's expanding from Arkansas. This is going to be huge. How do you know? Because America loves cheap, and he's selling cheap with efficiency. It's compound interest for rednecks. Save a little on everything, it adds up to a lot. We should invest. We have $500 in savings. Then we invest $500. That's all our money. No, that's all our cash. Our real money is time. We're 24 years old. If this grows at just 10% a year for 40 years, that $500 becomes $22,000. And if it fails? Then we start over with next month's $500. But Henry, it won't fail. Poor people need to shop too, and Walmart's the first company to realize poor people's money spends just as good as rich people's. October 23, 1972, I bought 30 shares of Walmart at $16.50. Commission was $29, leaving me with exactly 30 shares. Everyone thought I was insane. My brother Marcus said, "You spent your emergency fund on a store for hillbillies?" My father said, "This is why your people stay poor, gambling instead of saving." Those 30 shares, through splits and reinvested dividends, are now 92,160 shares worth $14.7 million. Not bad for hillbilly gambling. But that was just the beginning. Barbara and I developed a system. We lived on $15,000 a year when we made $30,000. Then lived on $20,000 when we made $50,000. Then $25,000 when we made $75,000. Every extra penny went into stocks. Not bonds, not savings accounts, not real estate, stocks of companies we understood. 1973, McDonald's at $22. Fast food is killing black communities, my sister said. That $1,500 investment is worth $2.3 million today. 1974, Coca-Cola at $6. Diabetes in a bottle, the church ladies said. That $1,000 is worth $890,000 today. 1975, Black & Decker at $8. Why invest in tools when you can't fix anything? My father mocked. That $800 is worth $650,000 today. 1976, IBM at $67. Computers are for white corporations, everyone said. That $2,000 is worth $1.8 million today. Christopher was born August 15, 1973, at Newark Beth Israel Medical Center, 2 weeks late, like he was already making us wait for him, already establishing that his timeline was the only one that mattered. The delivery was complicated, 36 hours of labor, Barbara screaming words I didn't know she knew, emergency C-section when his heart rate dropped, me standing there useless in surgical scrubs that made me look like I was back in the field hospital at Kisan. When they finally pulled him out, purple and screaming and covered in blood and other fluids I didn't want to identify, the nurse said, "You have a son." I said, "Is he okay?" She said, "He's perfect." She was wrong, but we wouldn't know that for years. We raised him with everything we didn't have: good schools, Catholic at first, then Montclair Prep, new clothes from Sears but still new, his own bedroom, which I'd shared with 2 brothers, enough food, no government cheese, no water soup, and absolutely no understanding of what things actually cost because we never wanted him to worry about money the way we had. That was our second mistake. The first was thinking love could be measured in dollars. The 1980s were my accumulation years. While everyone was doing cocaine and thinking greed was good, I was buying everything on sale, not clothes or cars but stocks. 1984, Apple at $27. The Macintosh had just come out. Everyone said it was a toy. I saw it as the future. $5,000 became $3.2 million. 1985, Home Depot at $8. Who's going to drive to a warehouse for a hammer? $3,000 became $1.9 million. 1986, Microsoft IPO at $21. Gates was a kid. DOS was confusing. But software had no manufacturing cost, pure compound interest. $10,000 became $8.9 million. 1987, the market crashed. Black Monday. Everyone panicked. I bought everything. Spent $15,000 we'd saved for Christopher's college. Barbara trusted me. If you're wrong, he goes to community college. If you're right, he can buy the college. That $15,000 became $3.4 million. But Christopher didn't know any of this. He thought we were poor because we acted poor. Drove a 1981 Honda Accord with 200,000 miles. Shopped at Caldor. Vacationed at the Jersey Shore, staying at motels that charged by the hour but gave weekly rates. His clothes came from Sears, not the mall. His birthday parties were in our backyard, not at venues. Why can't we have nice things? He asked in high school, when appearances mattered more than education. We have nice things, Barbara said. We have each other. That's not what I mean. I know what you mean, I said. And someday you'll understand why we live like this. But he never did. Instead, he grew ashamed. Told people I was in facility management instead of janitorial work. Said Barbara was a professor instead of a high school teacher. Lied about our address, our cars, our lives. College was Rutgers, 1991 to 1995. I could have paid for Princeton, Harvard, anywhere. But I wanted him to earn it, to understand that admission was about merit, not money. He got in on his own. Smart kid, good grades, excellent SATs. But once there, he immediately started pretending to be rich. Joined the most expensive fraternity. Dated girls from Short Hills and Alpine. Spent spring breaks in Cancun and Cabo while telling us he was studying with friends. We knew he was lying. Barbara always knew when he was lying, but we let it slide, thinking college was where you figured yourself out. He figured out he wanted to be nothing like us. 1994, Amazon IPO at $18. Everyone said it was insane. Selling books online? Barnes & Noble will crush them. I put in $15,000, everything saved from not renovating our kitchen. Barbara made do with the same avocado green appliances from 1971. That investment is now worth $12.7 million. 1997, Apple again, near bankruptcy, $7 per share. They're dead, everyone said. Windows won. I bought $20,000 worth, our entire emergency fund. Barbara said, if Jobs can come back from the dead, so can Apple. She was right. That's $18 million today. 1998, Google pre-IPO, through a complicated arrangement Marcus helped structure. $25,000 that was supposed to be for a new roof. We patched the old one instead. That's now worth $24 million. Barbara got sick January 2001. Started as being tired all the time, which we attributed to teaching teenagers for 30 years. Then weight loss, which she initially celebrated, finally losing that menopause weight. Then pain that made her cry when she thought I wasn't listening, holding her side like she was keeping something from escaping. Breast cancer, stage IIB, aggressive as a Goldman Sachs recruiter. The doctor, an Indian woman named Dr. Patel who looked too young to be deciding life and death, gave us the statistics. With aggressive treatment, 40% 5-year survival rate. What about without treatment? Barbara asked. 6 months, maybe 8. I'll take the 40%, Barbara said. I'm good at beating odds. Ask Henry. I married him when everyone said I was too good for a janitor. The treatment was brutal. Surgery that removed parts of her I'd never thought about losing. Chemotherapy that made her hair fall out in clumps, her beautiful afro gone, leaving her scalp smooth and vulnerable. Radiation that burned her from the inside. The bills came to $340,000 beyond what insurance covered. Christopher, who was working at Goldman Sachs by then, making $150,000 a year and thinking he was king of the world, assumed we'd go bankrupt. Started looking at affordable nursing homes, talking about selling our house, mentioning reverse mortgages. I wrote a check for $340,000 like it was nothing. Where did you get that? Christopher asked, stunned. Saved it. Nobody saves $340,000 on a janitor's salary. I did. He didn't believe me. Actually asked if I was dealing drugs, if I was connected to the mob, if I'd stolen it. His own father. The man who'd raised him, who'd never missed a little league game, who'd taught him to ride a bike and tie a tie and be a man. He thought I was a criminal because I had money he couldn't explain. Barbara heard that from her hospital bed where she was dying, and turned her face to the wall and cried. He's lost, Henry, she said that night. Money has eaten his soul. Promise me something. Anything. Show him the truth, but only when he's ready to see it. When he's destroyed everything with his greed. When he's at his absolute worst. That's when you show him what he could have had if he just respected where he came from. She died September 15, 2001, at 6:23 a.m., 4 days after September 11th. I always thought she waited, making sure the world wasn't ending before she left it. Her last words were, "Take care of Christopher. He's going to need you more than he knows. And Henry? Thank you for the adventure. $500 to $70 million. Not bad for a janitor and a teacher." She knew. Of course she knew. She'd been tracking every investment, keeping her own spreadsheets, calculating our net worth every month. She just never cared about spending it. What would we buy? She'd say. A bigger house to clean? A fancier car to worry about? Designer clothes to impress people we don't like? We have everything we need. After Barbara died, Christopher's contempt grew. He was making $250,000 by then, living in a $4,000 per month apartment in Tribeca, wearing suits that cost more than I made in a month. He'd visit once a month, always with comments about my situation. "Dad, you need to think about the future." I'm 55. I've been thinking about the future since before you were born. I mean financially. You can't live on Social Security. I'll manage. Managing isn't thriving, Dad. Look at you, same house, same car, same clothes. You've been standing still for 30 years while the world moved forward. Movement isn't always progress, Christopher. Sometimes it's just motion. But he didn't understand metaphors unless they involved money. 2008, the financial crisis. Christopher called me in a panic. "Dad, the market's crashing. If you have any investments, which I doubt, sell everything." Why? Because it's going to get worse. This is a complete meltdown. I'm at Goldman, Dad, I know these things. I bought more. Everything. Spent $5 million in March 2009 when the market was at its lowest, when everyone thought capitalism was ending. Christopher thought I was senile. "Dad, you don't understand. This is different." "I was at Kisan," I said. "That was different. This is just fear." That $5 million is worth $23 million today. The investment club started in 2015. I was at the library, reading Barron's, when Michael Washington sat down next to me. He was a janitor at Weequahic High School, been there 40 years. "You're Henry Lancaster," he said. "Yeah. I know what you are." My heart stopped. "What do you mean?" "You're rich. Filthy, secretly rich. Just like me." Turns out Michael had been buying Microsoft since 1987, had $3 million nobody knew about. We started meeting weekly, then invited James Brown, janitor at Eastside High, $5 million in Apple, Patricia Martinez, lunch lady at Central, for $1 million in Amazon, Tommy Chun, mechanic, $7 million in Google, Dorothy Williams, bus driver, $3.5 million in Netflix. We called ourselves the Invisible Millionaires. Met every Tuesday at the library, discussing investments while librarians thought we were a book club for poor people. By 2020, there were 15 of us, collective net worth over $200 million, all working blue-collar jobs, all living like we were poor, all understanding something Christopher never did. Wealth wasn't about looking rich, it was about being rich. "Why don't we tell people?" Dorothy asked once. "Because," I said, "the minute they know about the money, we stop being people and become ATMs. Right now they ignore us, which means we're free. That's worth more than recognition." 2020, COVID hit. Market crashed. Christopher called, panic in his voice. "Dad, this is it. This is the big one. Sell everything." "I don't have anything to sell," I lied. "Good, because this could last forever. The market might never recover." I bought $8 million worth of stock in March 2020. Amazon, Apple, Microsoft, Tesla, Zoom, everything that was obviously going to benefit from people staying home. By 2021, that $8 million was worth $19 million. Christopher never mentioned his prediction again. That's the thing about being wrong with other people's money. You forget. Being wrong with your own money, that you remember forever. The birthday party planning started in August 2023. Madison called, fake sweetness in her voice like artificial sweetener in coffee. You could taste the chemicals. "Henry, we want to throw you a big 75th birthday party." "Why?" "Because you deserve it. Because we love you. Because family is important." All lies. I'd seen the email Christopher sent her, accidentally CCing me. "We need to get him into assisted living before he falls or something and costs us real money. The party is the perfect place to announce it. Public pressure will make him agree." So I prepared. Had my accountant prepare statements for all 12 accounts. Vanguard, $82,764,445.89. Fidelity, $12,384,291.45. Schwab, $8,793,444.13. E-Trade, $6,235,871.93. TD Ameritrade, $4,892,337.41. Individual stocks in various companies, $9,294,055.08. Total, $124,364,445.89. Then I prepared my new will, executed October 1, 2023. Newark Central High School, $30 million for scholarships for janitors' children. The Invisible Millionaires, $1 million each, $15 million total. Vietnam Veterans Fund, $20 million. Barbara's Charities, $15 million. Various Cancer Research, $10 million. Christopher, $53,847. The total of all his charity to me over the years, adjusted for inflation. Madison, a framed photo of my mop. Grandchildren, college tuition, but only after working as janitors for 1 year. October 7, 2023. My 75th birthday. The Olive Garden in Paramus, selected by Madison because it was Henry's Speed aka, cheap enough that she wouldn't feel bad about paying, though she'd expense it to Christopher's company anyway. I arrived at 2:45 p.m., 15 minutes early, driving my 2007 Honda Civic that Christopher had offered to help me replace 17 times. Parked between his new Porsche 911 Turbo, $200,000, and Madison's Range Rover Sport, $150,000. The contrast was intentional on their part. Look how successful we are, look how pathetic you are. Inside, 43 people were already gathered. Christopher's Goldman colleagues, Brad, Kevin, Marcus, Jennifer, all in their 30s, all making mid-six figures, all looking at me like I was a museum exhibit labeled failure, American, circa 1948. Madison's parents, the Walsh dynasty of car dealerships, looking like they'd rather be anywhere else. My sister Dorothy, who knew everything and had been biting her tongue for 20 years. My nephew Marcus, Dorothy's son, the only lawyer I trusted, who'd helped structure my trusts and looked ready to explode. The dinner was aggressively basic. Madison had ordered the tour of Italy special for everyone. Dad loves simple food, she announced. The wine was $7.99 house red that tasted like someone had dissolved Jolly Ranchers in vinegar. The breadsticks were unlimited but cold. The salad was wilted. Even by Olive Garden standards, it was insulting. At 3:47 p.m. exactly, I know because I was watching the clock waiting, Christopher stood up, tapped his glass, smiled that smile that cost $15,000 in dental work, and began his toast. Every word was calculated to hurt. Every pause designed for maximum impact. Every gesture, the way he pointed at me like I was evidence in a trial, the way he smirked when mentioning my salary, the way he emphasized 50 years like it was a prison sentence, choreographed for cruelty. When he said, "Dad chose the safety of a mop bucket," Brad from Goldman actually laughed. When he said, "living off Social Security and my charity," Madison's mother nodded approvingly. When he said, "the failure who created success," someone took a photo. When he finished with, "may your remaining years be as comfortable as my financial planning can make them," I knew Barbara had been right. This was the moment. Peak arrogance. Maximum cruelty. The perfect time for truth. I stood up slowly, like my joints hurt, which they did but not enough to matter. Reached into my pocket with deliberate theatricality. Unfolded the statement like it was the Declaration of Independence. "Christopher," I said, my voice carrying the authority of someone who'd survived war, built a fortune, and raised an ungrateful son, "since you're so concerned about money, about success, about what constitutes real achievement, I thought you should see this. The number was visible from space, $82,764,445.89. The silence was a living thing. You could hear the kitchen staff cooking, the coffee machine percolating, someone in the parking lot honking, the universe reshuffling itself to accommodate this new reality. Christopher's face was a masterpiece of confusion. His brain, that Goldman Sachs-trained financial instrument, couldn't process the number. It was like asking a calculator to divide by zero, complete system failure. Then he fainted. Not a gentle swoon or a graceful collapse, but a full-body shutdown that sent him backward into the Caesar salad like he'd been shot. The dressing splashed. Croutons flew. His $5,000 suit absorbed it all like his brain was trying to absorb the impossible. Madison's scream was primal. Not surprise or concern, but rage. The rage of someone who just realized they'd been playing checkers while I'd been playing chess in 3 dimensions. "This is fake," she screamed, grabbing the statement, her nails, French manicure, $200 every 2 weeks, scratching the paper. "You're a janitor. You're nobody. You're nothing." "I'm a janitor with $124 million, I corrected. "Which makes me somebody with $124 million more than you'll ever see." She actually called Vanguard. Right there. On speaker. "Got Monica, my advisor for 20 years. This is Madison Chin Lancaster. I need to verify an account." "Mrs. Lancaster. Henry's daughter-in-law. How nice to hear from you. How can I help? Is account number 888473329 real? I can't discuss specific accounts without." "He's right here. It's his birthday. He's showing us a statement." "Oh, Mr. Lancaster's birthday. Yes, that's his main account. One of 12, actually. Lovely portfolio. One of our best performers. Self-directed for 50 years. Remarkable returns." Madison dropped the phone in the minestrone. The room erupted. Christopher's colleagues were taking photos, calculating my returns, realizing I'd beaten every fund manager on Wall Street for 5 decades. One of them, Kevin, actually started clapping. "Sir, that's impossible. You turned janitor wages into 9 figures." "No, I turned time into money. Compound interest did the rest. You Wall Street boys always forget. The market doesn't care about your MBA or your algorithms or your insider information. It cares about time. And I had more time than all of you." Christopher had recovered consciousness but remained in the salad bowl, Caesar dressing in his hair, a crouton stuck to his forehead like a third eye that could finally see clearly. "How?" he whispered. "So I told them. Everything. Every investment, every year of living on nothing, every night studying while they thought I was watching TV. Walmart. Apple. Amazon. Google. Bitcoin. The whole portfolio, built one paycheck at a time while everyone thought I was worthless. You lied to us." Christopher accused, finally extracting himself from the salad. "When did I lie? When did I ever claim to be poor? You saw a janitor and assumed the rest. You saw a black man with a mop and thought you knew my whole story. That's not lying. That's you being exactly what Barbara always said you were, shallow as a puddle and twice as murky. We're your family. We deserved to know. You deserved to know when you treated me with respect. Instead, you've spent 20 years being ashamed of me, hiding me, lying about me, apologizing for me. You introduced me to Madison's parents as unfortunately blue-collar. You told your girlfriends in college I was dead. You skipped my 70th birthday because you had a golf tournament. What exactly did you deserve?" The will announcement was the death blow. $53,847 to Christopher, his own charity returned without interest. A mop photo to Madison. The grandchildren required to work as janitors before college. That's illegal. Madison shrieked. We'll contest it. With what money? I asked. Christopher's about to be fired from Goldman for becoming a viral sensation. You're about to divorce him for not being rich. And my will has a poison pill. Contest it, you get nothing. Not even the $53,847. I was right. Christopher was fired within 2 weeks. The video of his toast and my revelation, titled "Janitor Dad Worth $124 Million Destroys Banker Son," got 87 million views. He became a meme. Investment banker can't see $124 million sitting across from him was on t-shirts. Goldman couldn't have someone that blind to money representing them. Madison filed for divorce within 3 days, claiming fraud. The judge, a black woman who'd probably dealt with her own assumptions, laughed. "Ma'am, your husband being wrong about his father's net worth isn't fraud. It's karma." Case dismissed. Christopher lost everything. The house, mortgaged to the hilt. The Porsche, leased. The reputation, destroyed. He came to my door, begging. I didn't answer. He sent letters. I returned them unopened. He sent the children with handwritten cards. I sent them back with checks for their college funds, accessible only after their janitorial year. He works at H&R Block now, preparing tax returns for $60,000 a year. Lives in a one-bedroom apartment in Newark, 10 blocks from where I started. His last letter said, "I understand now, Dad." Finally. Working at H&R Block, I see janitors and bus drivers with better portfolios than doctors. I was the fool. I'm mopping my office floors for extra money. It's honest work. I'm learning. The Invisible Millionaires incorporated last month. We're starting a fund, blue-collar workers only, minimum investment $100, no fees until we make you money. We're going to teach what we learned, that compound interest doesn't check your resume, that patience beats intelligence, that a janitor who invests beats a banker who spends. The Olive Garden table where Christopher fainted is now a tourist attraction. They've literally bronzed the salad bowl, framed the spot, added a plaque, the table of truth, where assumptions died and karma was served. I eat there free for life, which saves me $11.99 every Tuesday. My name is Henry James Lancaster. I'm 76 years old. I fought in Vietnam, married the love of my life, raised an ungrateful son, mopped floors for 50 years, and built a fortune that embarrassed everyone who thought they were better than me because they wore suits instead of uniforms. The money was never the point. The point was proving that dignity doesn't come from a job title, that wealth doesn't come from a salary, that success doesn't come from a degree. It comes from patience, discipline, and the ability to see value where others see nothing. Christopher saw a janitor and assumed failure. Now he knows the truth. The only failure was his inability to see that a man with a mop can have more money than a man with an MBA, more success than someone with a six-figure salary, more wealth than someone who measures worth by appearance instead of substance. $124,364,445.89. Built one mop stroke, one paycheck, one investment at a time. While they laughed, I bought. While they spent, I saved. While they assumed, I accumulated. And now while they beg, I give it all away, to people who understand that work is work, whether you're cleaning toilets or trading stocks. The only difference is that one requires getting your hands dirty, and the other just makes your soul dirty if you're not careful. Christopher chose the dirty soul. I chose the dirty hands. And in the end, the dirty hands were holding all the clean money. That's compound interest. That's patience. That's justice served at exactly the right temperature, ice cold, with a side of unlimited breadsticks. Thank you for listening to today's story of justice served ice cold. Look at your screen right now. Look at your screen now. There are 2 more videos. Both will restore your faith in karma. Hit the notification bell. Tomorrow's story will shock you even more. Remember, respect your elders, or become the next cautionary tale.